Hey everyone, my name is Yesenia. Welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be a February TBR wrap up. So you're gonna see this outfit and me in this makeup a few times just because I really hate doing my makeup on the weekends. So I'm just filming all three videos in one sitting. So I'm filming a March TBR. This is the February TBR wrap up. And then I'm also gonna be filming a February book haul. So like I said, this video is my February TBR wrap up. And if you see me looking down, it's because I have all the books that I read this month and then all the ratings, and that way I don't forget. And then I have the physical copies of some of these books, but some of the other books I also read like a Kindle version, and then I also listened to 2 audiobooks. I am so sorry. I listened to 2 audiobooks this month as well. So I'm gonna be talking about the books that I read, and darn it, I did have some statistics. So I will say this at least, 3 books on this list I started in January, but I finished them in February. And I actually did finish them, it was that very first weekend in February. So like by February 1st or by February 2nd, they were already done. So I will count them because I wasn't even halfway done with all 3 of them. So I am gonna count them towards my February wrap up, even though they were not on my February TBR list, if that makes any sense. So like I said, I have 3 books that I started in January and then I finished them in February. And I'm gonna first start off with the only one that I have the physical copy of, and that is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. So this book, I'm first going to talk about the first book, and it says so up here, the sequel to Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. That book, The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I personally thought that book was freaking hilarious. The plot was so freaking interesting. Monty is just so extra, but he's extra in a good way, like in a funny way, if that makes any sense. So that book definitely, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This book follows Monty's sister, Felicity, on her journey of trying to become a doctor. So she's currently trying to get into a doctor's program and no one is accepting her because she's a woman. That is one of the main reasons why I really wanted to read this book. And also it was the second book to The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. She had big shoes to fill. And I'm sorry to say she did not quite fill them. I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I liked the storyline. There were sometimes I got annoyed with Felicity. I just wanted to reach into the book. I'm like, shut up! She is very stubborn. I thought I was stubborn. I thought my parents' bulldogs were stubborn. She is stubborn. And one of the main reasons why I did not like this book was because, spoiler alert, I am saying this right now, spoiler alert. She didn't end up becoming a doctor at the end, or at the very least, getting into a doctor's program. The book took a completely different direction, and it left Felicity, she did all of this work to get into a doctor's program and didn't even end up in a doctor's program or with any offers or something. So that is why, I mean, I did enjoy the book. I just did not like the ending. I am a plot-driven person. I do like seeing character growth. However, the plot needs to grow with the character. The plot needs to go somewhere. So the fact that this book, how can I put it, started off in one direction and then went off completely into a different direction kind of made me mad a little bit. So that's why I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. It is what it is. Sorry, Felicity. I like your brother Monty better. I don't know what to say. So yeah, that's this book. Okay, the other book, the one that I finished. So I finished that book first, and then I finished The Heir. Hopefully I can put like a picture in this video somewhere, hopefully right here. So The Heir is the 4th book in the Selection series. and I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I actually generally really enjoyed reading this book. The main thing that I really liked about this book is that the main character, I think her name is pronounced Edlin. I don't know how to pronounce it's this character cast like has all these weird names, and then when she has a normal name, it's spelled differently. And I found this out reading this book because I listened to the audiobook for the first 3 books in the selection series, and then I read the ebook for this one. I'm like, oh, that's how she spelled all their names? Okay. I wasn't mad at it. I was just really confused by it. So I think her name is Edlin. I found Edlin to be very relatable. When I was reading this book, I'm like, oh, that's me to a T. I totally understood where Edlin was coming from. I was able to understand why she was so harsh, and I understand why she doesn't want to follow in her parents' footsteps. I completely understand that. I was able to completely relate to her. Now, I understand not everyone is going to be able to relate to her, which is totally fine. But I think also the reason why I gave it 4 out of 5 stars instead of 5 out of 5 stars is that, like, I understand why she was harsh, but she took it too far. A little bit. This book did leave off on a cliffhanger, and I do have The Crown, which is the last book in the selection series, on my March TBR. I really want to see who the hell she picks. I'm that interested. And there's something else that I want to see, but that is another big cliffhanger, and it's a giant reveal that I don't want to reveal. That's a spoiler I don't want to reveal at the end of this book. So I'm excited to read The Crown, and I'm excited to figure out who the hell she picked. And yeah, so I gave that book 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't 5 out of 5 stars. Like, it could have been better. It could have been better, but it's okay. I still thoroughly enjoyed reading it. The audiobook. One of the audiobooks that I finished in the month of February is Soul of the Sword. Hopefully I can put a picture right here. Soul of the Sword, which is the second book in the Shadow of the Fox series by Julie. So this is the second book in the Shadow of the Fox trilogy. And this book, I did notice, got mixed reviews on BookTube. Some people really enjoyed it. I was one of the people who really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And some people didn't like it. Like, some people said it was a filler book. Like, it was the typical second book in a trilogy filler book, and it didn't really add to the story. I listened to the audiobook, and I think the people who gave it the low ratings maybe read it. I feel like the audiobook gave it so much life. So much life. Like, hearing the different narrators narrate Haikaimono's part, and then a different narrator for Yumiko's part. I personally felt like that's what really brought the book to life. And I will say this book has the most beautiful love scene I have ever read in my entire life. It was chapter 14, and there are no words to describe it. I have read a lot of love scenes, blah, 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 blah. They sound super typical, and then, like, it was very pointedly, blatantly obvious that it was there. So it was kind of like the typical love scenes. This book, or this chapter in particular, oh my goodness, I actually cried while I was listening to this love scene on my way home from work. I was on the highway crying, and then I had to pull myself together because I didn't want to get into a car accident. That's my personal opinion. The love scene came from Tatsumi's point of view, which I think brought it more to life, because if you read The Shadow of the Fox, at least the first one, Tatsumi is a very closed off and emotionless person, and he was trying to feel no emotions. And actually, you find out in this book how they crushed his soul. I was listening to when Yumiko went into Tatsumi's mind to find his soul, and then she found all of his memories, and then she found the memory that broke his soul. I had to stop because it was terrible. I thought it was absolutely terrible. So hearing that love scene first, and then hearing the scene where they finally broke Tatsumi, I felt like it kind of brought everything together. Anyway, I gave that book 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I understand like a lot of people on YouTube, they did say, oh, it was just like, it was just a second book that needed to be written. This book did leave off on a cliffhanger at the end of the book. I did not see that ending coming. I was like, what the hell? Did he really just do that? Yes, I'm like, he really just did that. So that is how I felt when I was listening to this book. So like I said, I don't know if those people on YouTube, like, I think they read it. I think you really give the book justice when you listen, this particular book, when you listen to it. It just brought it to life, and I really loved it, and I can't wait for Night of the Dragon to come out on March 31st. I think I will listen to Night of the Dragon, but I also want to buy Night of the Dragon. So anyway, that was the third book that I started in January, and then I finished in February. So now I'm gonna go to my February TBR list. So these were the books that I planned on reading in February. And I will say this, I read all books except 2, so I'm very proud of myself. The first book that I read, which was an Owl Crate book, and here in this, and this is the special Owl Crate edition, was Pride. Now I know that this is, it says right here, a Pride and Prejudice remix. I never read Pride and Prejudice. Please don't come after me in the comments if you're reading, or if you're watching this video. Please don't come after me. I never read Pride and Prejudice. And can I be brutally honest? After reading this book, I really don't want to. A lot of people said that they enjoyed reading this book better, like they enjoyed reading it more than the original. And I actually did not really like reading this book. It was a short book. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I understood the point of the book. I just didn't enjoy the storyline. As I've stated before, I'm a plot-driven person, and I felt like this book is so condensed. Some people, you know, say things about books like this book, like The Queen of Nothing. I have never read The Queen of Nothing, but I feel like most people on YouTube say, like, because The Queen of Nothing is about the size of this book, it had no room to grow. Like, if it had been like a 500-page book with room to grow, it would have made more sense. Now, I'm not saying that this book should have been 500 pages, but I felt like the storyline was, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I didn't get a chance to enjoy the storyline. So that's this book, 3.5 out of 5 stars. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I'm not sure if I wanna keep it. We'll see. I do unhaul my books, so if I don't like a book, it immediately goes off my bookshelf. I'm still like thinking twice about this book. So there's Pride. Up next, so I have written on my list here Splintered, which was an ebook that I really wanted to read this month. However, I did not get to it. Oopsie, that's okay. It's definitely going to be a book that I will get to it. Probably not in the month of March. I will probably put this a video up first, but once I put up my March TBR later on this week, you're gonna understand why I'm not gonna add Splinter to it. It'll have to wait. It's okay. All right, the next book that I read, was Scythe. So my dad is currently borrowing my copy of Scythe. However, I do have the second book. This book is on my March TBR, Thunderhead. So I'll hold up this book in the place of Scythe. So Scythe, I'm pretty certain like everybody knows what this series is about. This is the second book in the Arc of a Scythe series. And I really, really, really enjoyed the first one. I gave Scythe 5 out of 5 stars. So there's 2 books already, Soul of the Sword and Scythe. Those 2 books, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The first book was so well written, and then the ideas were so like they were conceptualized well. They were well thought out, they were written. I feel like Neil Shusterman really thought of like everything, all the possible holes that could possibly be filled, like flaws and everything. I really feel like he did that book its justice. Like, hell yeah, that was such a fantastic book. I am so glad that I hopped on the bandwagon and read it. I obviously loved it so much that I bought the second book. I will go hunt down that second book and I will find it. And I found Thunderhead. Thunderhead wasn't that hard to find. Come on, let's go. So yes, I love this book so much, and this is like a concept that I thought that my dad would really enjoy, so he is currently borrowing the first book. Anyway, so I gave Scythe 5 out of 5 stars. I'm really hoping to give Thunderhead 5 out of 5 stars. That is a book on my March TBR, and I'm really excited to read it. And then I also went into more detail about Scythe in my March TBR, so I'm not gonna dwell or go into too much detail about that one. I kind of want to move on to the next one because I kind of have a large pile here. All right, so after Scythe, I read Girls of Paper and Fire, and this is the last book this month that I gave 5 out of 5 stars. So this book, I will say, everyone says it on YouTube. I'm saying it myself. This comes, like, this is a sexual assault trigger warning. So the plot of this book is in this land, Ikara, I think that's how you pronounce it, Ikara, I think. In this land, there's a king who rules, and every year 8 girls get picked from, you know, the neighboring, how can I put it? Well, the neighboring areas, and 8 girls every year get picked to be the paper girls. So they essentially get sent to the king's castle, and they are his concubines, which is why this book comes with a sexual assault trigger warning. So the main character in this book is actually the 9th paper girl. She wasn't, like, they were already picked, they were already done. But as you can clearly see on the cover, she has like these beautiful golden yellow eyes, which was why they sent her off to the king to be the 9th paper girl. And this just, oh my God, when I read those scenes in here, it kind of ate away at me. Which is, I'm assuming that's part of the reason why, like, a lot of people, booktubers on YouTube, who just refuse to read this book because they don't like reading about sexual assault. I completely understand their personal decision. There's one particular scene in here, and oh my God, I felt like somebody went into my chest and ripped out my heart. That's how I felt. I know, I'm being dramatic. It's okay. But the overall plot line, I thought it was extremely well written. I thought, like, the one thing I really did like about this book is that it didn't romanticize sexual assault. So I know this is a term that gets thrown around on YouTube a lot, but, like, the author wrote it so that way it's not okay. Like, something has to change. This is not okay. And that is why I really, really enjoyed this book, because she didn't romanticize it. She didn't say, oh, it's totally fine. No, it's not. And then I did pick up this book, the second book in the series, and that will be featured in my February book haul. So that one's coming. So this one I gave 5 out of 5 stars. And then also, one more thing for this book. I know, I'm already going on 20 minutes with this video. I learned about 10 to 15 new words, like words I've never seen before. And that kind of made me really happy. That fact is going to play into the next book that I'm gonna talk about. So that's why I said that. Anyway, so the next book, and I don't have this anymore because I borrowed it from the English teacher. I'm so sorry, I have like hair all over the place. I borrowed it from the English teacher at work, and hopefully I can put like a picture of the book cover on here. But the next book I read after that was City of Saints and Thieves. So this book, I don't see this book on YouTube a lot, so I'll give a quick synopsis of it. It's about a girl, and her mother was killed. And after her mother was killed, she sent her sister off to a church, like a church school, to be raised, and then she chose to live on the streets, and she became like a master thief, and she's really good at it. And her main goal is to find out who in the world murdered her mother. So she has a theory on who murdered her mother, and she's trying to find evidence to prove that he is guilty. And then this plot goes on many different directions. I will say though, like, while I was reading this book, the plot went stagnant after about 100 pages. Like, the first 100 pages was really interesting, and then it kind of stayed stagnant for like the next 200 pages. Like, the story had to continue on somehow, and then the last 100 pages, that's when bam, 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 all the plot twists happen. I'm like, oh, okay, you wanted to go there? Okay, you went there. I will say this, I was pleasantly surprised with the book. So the English teacher has the sophomores read it, After reading it, I read the first line, I'm like, oh, that's fine. Number 1 to being a thief. Yeah, so I understand why. And then this book also, after reading it, I did notice, and this is where that comment about Girls of Paper and Fire, I learned like about 10 new words reading that book. I understood every single word in this book. And then I had to like think like a 15-year-old, and then that's when it really hit me like, okay, now I really do see why she picked this book. She had to pick a book that will capture their attention and that was also still simple enough for them to read and be able to understand the concepts of it. And I mean, I learned no new words reading this book, but that's okay. Like, maybe in their eyes, they probably learned a few words, and then she also just probably wanted to get them to read. So with that being said, I read this book after reading Scythe and Girls of Paper and Fire. I'm sorry, City of Saints and Thieves, they can't hold a teacup up to Scythe and Girls of Paper and Fire. So I gave this book 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really did thoroughly enjoy reading it. However, it had big shoes to fill after the last 2 books that I read, which were both 5 out of 5 stars. So that is the reason why I did give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. So yeah, that book, like I said, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, next book after City of Saints and Thieves. I read Amber and Dusk. So this is another Outcrate book that I read this month. This book I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I had such a hard time following the plot in this book. I actually barely remember the main character because I feel like Sylvie has a magical power, and she does have a right to a throne in a specific land, and this book follows her, and she's trying to like control her magic and her special power, and at the same time trying to claim her throne. And so I've been hearing people saying, you know, comments about flowery handwriting. I could be wrong, but I personally feel as though this book has flowery handwriting. Like, the descriptions in this book were like too elaborate, and then it was kind of hard to follow. Like, what in the world? This book does have a second book. I actually think this is a trilogy, if I'm not mistaken. The next book is Diamond and Dawn. I kind of figured, I went to Google it because the book at the end of the book, it felt like it was not finished. I felt like there was more to the story. And actually, it was towards the end of the book that it really started to make sense. I'm like, oh, hell no, I can't do this. I can't do this. So I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars just for the simple fact that it was really hard for me to follow. And I taught elementary school for 2 years. If I could follow a kindergartner try to speak to me. Please give this video a thumbs up if you know what that feels like. So for me, since I'm able to understand what a kindergartner is telling me and not being able to understand what is in this book, that's kind of a problem. So this book, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I'm 99% certain that I am not going to be finishing out this trilogy. Oh my God, this book. The Gilded Wolves. I'm flat out saying this book I gave 2.5 out of 5 stars. 2.5. This book follows the perspective of 4 different people. So, I can handle 1. Obviously, I can handle 1. I can handle 2. 3 is kind of pushing it. 4, oh my God. This book was so freaking confusing. First of all, this book has deckled edges. I'm not a fan of deckled edges. I mentioned that in my March TBR because one of the books on my March TBR list has deckled edges, and it does make it harder to turn the pages. Like, I was fighting with one of the pages of a book that I was reading yesterday at my parents' house, 4 Dead Queens. If it only doesn't have to... Okay, sorry, rant over. But that's one thing. The second thing, this book was so hard to follow. Even harder than Amber and Dusk. Like, I was vaguely able to understand, not everything, but like a lot of things that were happening in this book. yeah, parts of it, like, they were too elaborate. Like, you could have cut back on the writing. I'm just saying. So yeah, I couldn't understand anything that was going on in this book. And the author really did try to, like, as soon as one perspective was done, she jumped into the, she jumped into the next perspective and then tried to pick up where that perspective, like, where the previous chapter left off. It was still so confusing. I didn't get the point of the book. The point was, like, made super early in the book, and I'm like, the book lost the point of view, like, the whole point of the story at some point. So I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. I just can't. There was a huge plot twist at the end. I will say that plot twist I did not see coming, but it was all the way at the end. I was some bad things do happen in this book, and I was just not invested in the characters enough or in the plot line to care. That sounds terrible, but I just, that was the lowest rated book that I read this month. Okay, there are 2 more books on this list that I do want to talk about. So the next one that I read after The Gilded Wolves is Crown of Feathers. I loved this book. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I didn't give it the full 5 stars. It's not that there were flaws, it's just that, like, so it takes the perspective of 3 different people. And like I said, 3 different people is kind of pushing it. However, all the stories, like, intertwined and made sense. Like, if you're gonna do multiple perspectives, this is the way to do it. Like, she had 3 different perspectives, and I understood every single perspective. Nothing was lost, nothing was confusing, and I really, really love this book. However, this book, look at how giant this book is. 477 pages. And then I also got the special All Crate edition of Heart of Flame. You guys will see me haul that book in my February book haul. Because I was being bad this month. Last month, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I was being bad and buying books. So Crown of Feathers, I really, really love this book. Like I said, I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. My bad. Oh my goodness. I really, really love this book. The last book, I listened to another audiobook this month, and I listened to, I actually have, like, the excerpt of it from like, it's an Owl Crate excerpt, but it's too far away. I don't want to go get it. Is King of Fools by Amanda Foody, and King of Fools is the 2nd book in the Shadow Game series. So the first one was Ace of Shades, and then the 2nd one is King of Fools. So I gave King of Fools 4 out of 5 stars, and the main reason for that is I liked the plot. I really did. I think I would have enjoyed it more if I had read the physical book instead of listened to the audiobook. The audiobook was 17 and a half hours, and the narrator's voice, after a while, like, I wanted to pull my hair out because I got tired of her voice. And she read the perspective of 3 different people, and they just all sounded similar. She couldn't quite capture the personalities of all 3 characters, and, like, it all sounded mushed together. So, for example, Soul of the Sword had 2 different narrators reading 2 different, like, they each read the same perspective. And that's what brought the book to life. I listened to this narrator's voice for 17 and a half hours, trying to differentiate her personality among 3 different perspectives. So that was the main reason why I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So anyway, thank you guys so much. This is a pretty long video. I'm right now cutting it at 35 minutes. I'm gonna try my best to cut this down a little bit so that way it's not long and boring, because I did actually read a lot this month, and I'm really proud of myself for reading a lot this month, which is why this video ended up being so long. So if you stuck with it to the end, I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback, please let me know down in the comments. Please be nice about it. I'm totally okay with constructive criticism. I'm not okay with you being mean. All right, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.